We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. I'm recording this on Wednesday night, but you're listening to it on Saturday. I've talked about this before. I'm going on a trip to Los Angeles. I'm not sure what my conditions will be. So, to record a podcast every night, that's going to make it difficult. So, I've recorded a few ahead of time, some of the ones you've been listening to, and of course, this one. Now, it's Wednesday night, but you're listening Saturday. I voted, as you can see here. I voted early. I voted blue. Didn't even have to look at the names. If it said Democrat, I voted for him. If it said Republican, I threw up in my mouth a little bit and I didn't vote for him. It was simple as that. But my voting is out of the way. My wife's voting is out of the way. And hopefully, if you have early voting, that you will do the same thing. That it's good to have that done. The thing about it is as of late, I've been getting a lot of people coming to my page. I thought we'd gotten over this, but people are terrified again. Oh my God, the polls are saying this, or the media is saying that. Kamala's campaign is worried they're scratching to stay alive. You have to understand this is all bullshit, and this is the media using bullshit to benefit themselves. That's what's going on here. We're getting down to the last few days, the last 10 days or so. And people are getting nervous on the Republican side. So they're trying to throw out as much shit as they can possibly do. They don't really have any hopes of changing the election. They're just hoping to change the narrative. So when Donald Trump does lose, they can say, but all those polls, they were great. It must be rigged. This is all a big game. And I'm growing very weary of it. I'm growing weary of seeing the games and the media and in the polls, but I'm even growing weary of those people that come to my page and need me to hold their hand because they're worried. We've been talking about this a lot here on the podcast and on TikTok. We understand that toward the end of the election or just leading up to the election, things are going to get crazy. People are going to say things. People are going to do things that maybe we don't expect. But when it comes down to the bottom line, in spite of what you hear in the media or in the polls, I ask you a simple question. So, what's changed? What is it that makes you think that now that Donald Trump has a better chance to win than he did, say, a month ago? What did he do? What happened? Well, nothing happened. As I pointed out in a TikTok, we've got Kamala Harris, maybe the most popular presidential candidate in history, Donald Trump, the least popular candidate in presidential history. Donald Trump lost by 7 million votes in 2020 to Joe Biden. Kamala Harris, this time around, is a much stronger candidate. Please tell me what Donald Trump has done in 4 years to gain back those 7 million votes and pull ahead. One thing that he's done in 4 years to increase his lot. There is nothing. Everything that's happened to Donald Trump, everything that Donald Trump has done or said has cost him votes. So why are you worried? Because some clown on TV tells you to be worried or just put some uncertainty in your mind? You have to understand where all this stuff is coming from. It's coming from fucking Republicans. It's coming from Republicans, and then the media is using it because it's to their benefit. It gets you worked up and gets you to continue to watch. I got to tell you, I'm really ready for this to be done because when it's done, I want to go out against these media fucks in the polls and some of these people that have been ranting and raving. I keep getting Trump-fucks coming to my page. Just you wait till November 5th. See, they're buying into the bullshit. They believe it. And I like that. And I'll tell you why I like that. There's only one thing better than watching a Trump-fuck get beat is when they get beat and blindsided. They don't know what's coming. They don't know what's going to hit them. And then they get slammed. And that's what's going to happen here. That is definitely what's going to happen. There's been nothing that's changed in this entire process, even though we get 10 days away, 12 days away. All the facts are there. Now, tonight, just before recording this, I watched Kamala Harris's town hall meeting, and it went very well. I thought it went very well. It's funny, Dana Bash, after the town hall meeting, she says, well, I've been hearing from some people, and they said, if Kamala's intention was to close the deal here, we're not sure she did. Fuck you, Dana Bash. We know who you are. We know who Jake Tapper is. We don't like you. We know what CNN does. The people saw what they saw. They don't give a fuck what you think. They just don't care. So in this audience, they had, well, this person's Democrat and leaning towards you, but hasn't made a decision yet. That's absolute bullshit. Anybody at this late date that hasn't made a decision is either a dumb fuck or looking for attention, looking to be on a TV show. If it's taken you this long and you still don't have a decision, you can't pick between the two, something's fucking wrong with you. You're not very bright. So I told you that Kamala Harris had her town hall meeting. That's what she did tonight. What did Donald Trump have going on tonight? Well, in Donald Trump, there was audio recording that came out from General John Kelly, who was Donald Trump's chief of staff. And in that recording, it said that Donald Trump, well, John Kelly said he is the definition of fascism. He's a fascist. He talked about how Donald Trump said, well, you know, Hitler did some good things. So you got somebody being exposed by one of the fine people that he hired that explains to the crowd that Donald Trump is a fascist and he loves Hitler. And then you have Kamala Harris on the other side talking about the facts, talking about her policies, talking about the future, and talking about Donald Trump and the risk we take by voting him in. And Dana Bash and CNN says, well, I don't know if she closed the door, closed the deal. Well, I say compared to Donald Trump, it's a pretty, it's not even fucking close. And see, that's the problem. They hold Kamala Harris to a higher standard. And I'm guaranteeing you, no matter how high she hit that standard, they would say she's fallen short. Well, they can talk all they want, but when November 5th comes along, we're going to find out exactly what's happened. And I don't have any question in my mind. You can worry, you can wring your hands, you can clutch your pearls. I'm not fucking worried. I know what's going to happen because I'm not taking an emotional stance on this. I'm not taking what the media, the polls, or the Trump fuck says. And I'm not fucking scared. That's the worst thing you can be in this country. Scared. If you're scared, you're already losing. So don't be scared. I know exactly what's going to happen, just like I knew what was going to happen in 2022. Look at the facts, discard all the emotion and all the bullshit, and you'll understand too. So, anyway, that's what went on tonight for Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And I say it's a big win for Kamala Harris. Everything is such a short distance away. There isn't much that's going to change anything. That's why I don't believe that there are a lot of undecided people. You'd have to be stupid to be fucking undecided. It's just absolutely ridiculous to imagine. And I'm glad I don't run into people that say they're undecided because I'm afraid I wouldn't be very friendly to them, whether they were Democrat or Republican. Come on, get your head out of your ass. It's a simple choice. Autocracy or democracy? Which one do you like? Now, if you're up for debate on that, then you're not valuable to our side. Why don't you just go vote for Donald Trump? We don't give a fuck. You'll be in the minority, you'll lose, and then you're going to have to address who you are after the fact. This is what I'm truly looking for. Every day I see people upset and the media doing what they're doing. If I'm right, if a lot of us are right, and Kamala wins in a big way, maybe even a landslide, if that happens, there's a lot of motherfuckers that have to address their behavior. They were either stupid or they were complicit. And I dare say they were complicit. They have all the resources they possibly need. They are complicit in fucking with our minds and manipulating the people. And that just cannot stand. And if that's what they do, we should all leave them in droves and not watch their shit because we can't trust them. All right. In doing this show, it's all by myself, as you notice. I haven't done many of those as of late, and I'm very appreciative of all the guests that come on. We have a cross section, a diversity of guests. They all offer different things and bring different information and styles to it, and I'm very appreciative of it. When I first started doing this podcast, it was just me. Then I came up with the idea of having guests on, and then sporadically we'd get a guest here, a guest there. Now we get guests all the time, and I think that's fantastic. We're getting guests on a repeat basis, and that's good because they do a great job. And I want to remind anybody has that opportunity to be on the show if you're a listener of the podcast. All you have to do is send me an email at rationalboomer@gmail.com. We'll talk a bit. We'll try to work out a time and we'll do the show. You've heard it. It's very simple. It's just a conversation. There is no big production about it. It's very simple. I send you a Zoom link. You come on. We start talking. I kind of lead the conversation. And ultimately, it's just a nice little talk. Now, in addition to those people who come on the show, we get a lot of emails. I used to intersperse the shows with a couple of emails here, a couple of emails there. And then when I had guests, it was hard to make time for the emails. So I started bunching them together a little bit more. And now we're at a point where I have to do whole shows that are emails, which is what today's show is going to be. So we might as well get into it. By the way, the reason I'm recording this on Wednesday and you're hearing it on Saturday is because I'm in Los Angeles. It's just a fun little trip. We're going to go see a Vikings game, see some friends and folks. And I want to tell you one other thing. One person I'm going to meet up with when I get to Los Angeles, well, I'm in Los Angeles now, is Abe Gurko. He was on the podcast recently. You know Abe, great guy. He's Won't Be Silent on TikTok. I've been playing with the idea. He's Won't Be Silent. I should take some comments from some of the Republicans and go by Won't Shut the Fuck Up, because that would suit me better than something more genteel like what he has. But I just want to say this. In the podcast with Abe Gurko, he was talking about a project he was involved in. Executive producer of a documentary. Basically, it's supposed to be a series, but there's only one out now. It's on HBO Max. It's called Loud, and it's about women and protest and women's rights and all that sort of thing. And my wife and I sat down and watched it earlier. Fucking incredible. Great documentary. And I hope they pick it up and play the rest of the episodes, because it's a great documentary. It goes back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. And it talks about women in music. And, there's Nina Simone, there's Joni Mitchell, there's all kinds of people up to current times with Alicia Keys and all kinds of stuff. I recommend you watch it. It is absolutely incredible. It's a great documentary. All right. Now that we're here and we're doing this, let's get to some emails. All right. Good morning, Boomer. I just finished listening to your podcast with Dr. Arlene. This week's podcast have been great and very informative as always. I was looking forward to another with Dr. Arlene, and it was like you both read my mind. She posted a TikTok the other day where she played Aquarius. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. If you're my age, you'll know the song. If you're a young person, Google that shit. And I remember that playing when I was a kid. I do too. Then her TikTok continued and explained how early voter turnout was exceeding previous elections, especially in Georgia. I commented on it, saying how I look forward to hearing her and you on your podcast, and here we are. I am definitely more hopeful as we get into the heart of the election, and it's just over 2 weeks out. The podcast with Dr. Arlene was very positive and hopeful, and I absolutely agree with you when you said we can't lose our minds over what's happening yet. It's definitely is wasting precious time, which we don't have. Your other guests are amazing as well. Will, Jace, Ed, Eric, TJ from PA, and especially Old Soul. The different perspectives and fire and passion from each is amazing. Thank you for all you do, and know it's a refreshing feeling every morning listening to your podcast. Artie from Long Island, New York, or should I say Long Island? I don't have a New York accent, but I know some folks from Long Island, and I always give them shit. Thank you very much, Artie, and you're very astute to note that these guests are outstanding. Here's the thing. People always say, I don't know if I could do a podcast. Well, these people don't do podcasts, but they come on my podcast and they do a hell of a job. You'd be surprised what you can do if you give it a shot. All right, the next one says, "Hello, Boomer. I listen to your podcast daily, but yesterday I heard something I have not heard before. I always liked Old Soul, but after I heard her going off the rails yesterday, my feelings toward her have changed. Now I love this amazing lady. Old Soul, you go, girl. I would love to see her do a live national interview with Dirty Diaper Donnie. She would not only expose him for who he really is, but she would tear him a new asshole right in the middle of his forehead. And then he would have to wear a second diaper over his poopy face. Boomer, you have done such a service to your listeners by bringing such a wonderful group of guests to your show. And Old Soul is a gem with such passion and dedication to all the people she reaches out to help. Thanks again for your daily dose of sanity. The oldest Boomer, Gary. Well, thank you, Gary. And I couldn't agree more about Old Soul. She's an unusual character. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean, she's a rare person. She is She's very compassionate. She's very active. She's not afraid to get her hands dirty and get in the middle of things and take action. She wasn't on this past week because she's bouncing around doing everything. She's really taken this election to heart, and she's doing all the work she can possibly do to make sure that Kamala wins. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing what she does. And you make a good point. While she is very sweet and very compassionate, do not piss her off because she is a force to be reckoned with. All right. The next one says, "Hey, Boomer, there is one concern that I've heard about from Neil Katyal on MSNBC. If the race is close enough, they could refuse to seat a speaker on January 3rd, thus throwing J6 into turmoil. Thoughts? Thanks, Pete." Well, I haven't heard that from Neil Katyal. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Um, you're, when you say the race is close enough, are you talking about the race for the presidential election or the race for the House? Because the race for the House is not going to be close. The Democrats will win by a significant amount, maybe 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 seats. Hakeem Jeffries will be the Speaker of the House on January 3rd. So I don't know how that has anything to do with the presidential election. I'd have to hear what he said, but I don't think that's an issue. I haven't heard anybody else talk about it either. Pete, this is what I'm telling you. Stop going in the media looking for shit to worry about. Things are going the way they need to go, and we will be fine. You need to have that mindset. All right. Next one says, "Hey, Mike, just finished the last live show you posted. I learned so much listening to you. I had never heard of Generation Jones. I was born in 1958. I always thought the boomer generation was too inclusive anyways, but what do I know? Arlene's show was fantastic, so informative. I hope she gets back on closer to the election or after or both. I dropped off my ballot at the local library today. I feel so accomplished. Um, LOL, go blue." And I don't have the name of the person here. But anyway, thank you very much. And yes, Arlene is fun to have on. It's interesting to watch Arlene uh, analyze these things. She's very, very data driven. And I'm not, I mean, data is important to me, but I'm more about the psychological aspects of this and what's going on and why it's going on. It's interesting having her on the show. I don't always grasp what she's saying because I don't think that way. And I think she feels the same way about me, but it's a good balance for those listeners. It's a great show. And yes, Arlene will probably be on before the election and going forward quite a bit. Oh, I see why there wasn't a name because I finished the email too short. So this email goes on. I said I dropped off my ballot at the local library today. I feel so accomplished. LOL, go blue. And then there's some emojis. And then she finishes up. "A big and hearty fuck you to all Trumplefucks who invade your live shows. Thank you, Peg HM, South Suburban, Chicago area." Well, Peg, thank you very much. And yeah, fuck you to all the Trumplefucks that try to get in the live. I will say this though, the TJ the plumber and Gray Captain are the moderators on my lives. They do a hell of a job. And TJ takes special joy in fucking with Trumplefucks. We may have to get him looked at because this is, I mean, I like fucking with Trumplefucks too, but TJ, he ain't messing around. He's the right person, and so is Great Captain to be the moderators on the TikTok lives. I like doing the lives because I get to interact with a lot of folks. I don't have to think as much as I do when, I'm doing shows like this. Um, I answer questions. I respond to comments. And actually, that's why I like doing the email shows too. I don't have to come up with a thought process. I let the emailers tell me where to go, and that's what we do. By the way, Peg had a part two to her email. The Senate race to watch is the piece of shit Larry Hogan versus Angela also Brooks. It pains me to say that I think we might lose that seat. I'm thinking of donating to her campaign. Hopefully, Tester in Montana can beat the carpetbagger guy. Thanks, Peg HM. I don't know much about that race with Larry Hogan and Angela also Brooks. I'd heard that Angela was doing pretty well and Larry was having trouble. Now, I haven't kept up with it, so I don't know for sure, but I truly do hope that Larry Hogan gets his ass kicked. And I'll be honest with you, Larry Hogan isn't the worst of the Trumplefucks. He's trying to reimagine himself and try to get away from that right now. And actually, during January 6th, I think he was helpful to Nancy Pelosi as far as trying to get National Guards set up from Maryland, in spite of the fact that Donald Trump wouldn't send them from D.C. I don't think he's a horrible guy, but we really need to eradicate every Republican from Washington, D.C. Any one of these that stick around could metastasize and turn into a fucking mess once again. All right. Next one says, hi, Boomer. Early voting started in Illinois today. I got a fresh manicure, blue and gold, before I stood in line for an hour. There was a large man behind me wearing a DJ t-shirt. He was literally standing next to me, next to a sign saying, no electioneering. A worker told him to immediately turn it inside out. He did without a fuss, but I wondered if he would be able to read his ballot. Vote blue down the ballot, Laura. Yeah, it is kind of disappointing when you're out. I went to an early polling place and it was just me and a couple of other folks, and I don't know if they were Trumplefucks or not. My wife and I went in, we did our business, and we got the fuck out. But there wasn't much of a crowd. I'm in a small suburb outside Minneapolis, and it was a random day, and we just said, fuck it, let's do it. But it is tough seeing Trumplefucks in the wild, isn't it? I'm at the point now, I don't really want to argue with them because I know it doesn't do any good. I just kind of smirk or laugh at them. And I'm hoping against hope that they see me smirk and laugh at them because I know that's the one thing that bothers them the most, to be made to look like a fool. Well, after November 5th, there's going to be a lot of motherfuckers that think they're going to feel foolish. And those that don't feel foolish, there'll be motherfuckers like me out there trying to make them look foolish. Because when this is over, nobody gets a break. If you followed Donald Trump up to this point, you are now going to be stained with that piece of shit for the rest of your life. Even if you try to walk away, if I see it, I'm going to turn on the spotlights and say, no, motherfucker, you're a Trumplefuck. Do not trust this man, whether they be a politician or a media person. It doesn't matter to me. They need to be exposed and they need to be disinfected with the light of day, in spite of the fact they may try to hide from the light of day. All right, the next one says, hi, Mike. I have an important message for all Republicans out there. Oh, here comes Panzer. So I heard on Fox News that Donald Perfect Call Trump worked for 2 minutes in a McDonald's somewhere in Pennsylvania. Did you see the way he was handing out those fries to the common man? He was perfect. No fries ever spilled from the container. Every bit of salt were well in place, and they were crispy as hell. At this pace, he should be promoted to flipping meat patties or even putting ketchup in burgers, which he has a lot of experience with since the first assassination attempt. No need to say that he should be named Employee of the Month. Even better, Employee of the Century in my mind. Meanwhile, Kamala is doing what? Non-stop interviews explaining her policies and trying to unify the country behind her. That's all fake news, a hoax, a witch hunt. True Republicans know that between the two of them, Donald Trump is the one with the real work experience. Those 2 minutes provide it without a shadow of a doubt. This is real presidential material that this country needs. Go MAGA, Panzer. P.S. Nah, never mind. I'll leave the PSs to Garage Door Jeff. Thank you for that. Um, Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with Panzer, he likes to do a little satire. So if any of that made you angry, just know it's a joke. I get it. I appreciate it. And thank you, Panzer, for sending yet another email. It's always a nice respite from some of the hard questions and comments to hear your stories. All right, the next one comes from Tracy. Hey, Boomer, I am what I thought was a teeny blue dot in deep red Louisiana. However, I was standing in line to vote, minding my own business, and overheard these two older white couples talking about having to vote for Kamala. They were saying their kids have threatened to move out of the country if Trump gets elected, which means they almost never get to see their grandkids. I didn't even think of that angle. Awesome idea. Get them with grandkids. Love your show, Tracy. That's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea. If somebody told me that you don't get to see your granddaughter unless you vote for Kamala, it wouldn't take me long to make the right choice there. Of course, I'm voting for Kamala. I get to see my granddaughter all the time. And I'm voting for Kamala so that I know my granddaughter is going to be safe going on into the future after I'm dead and gone. But whatever it takes to get people to do the right thing. It's sad that you have to leverage some people at some point. But if that's what it's going to take to save democracy and make our kids and grandkids safe in the future, fuck it. Do whatever you got to do at all cost. All right. Next one says, hey, Mike, I have a bit of a conundrum I'm hoping you can help me with. I emailed you a long time ago saying that I put a bet in on Biden winning the election. Obviously, Bet Us returned my bet as it was invalid. At the time, Trump was minus 130 and Biden was plus 110. I just let it go because after Harris had the incredible start and convention, I figured the odds wouldn't be very good. But now we're 2 weeks out, knowing she will win and knowing the polls are still inaccurate. I figured I would like to know what the odds are. I went into the site and the current odds are Trump minus 170 and Harris plus 150. What the fuck? How is that possible? It seems a lot like taking candy from a baby. That gave me cause to hesitate. Vegas is not in the business of giving away money. What the hell am I missing here? There are literally 1,000 arguments for Harris winning and none for Trump. I didn't put in the bet yet. I'm very tempted to lay down $2,000, but a little voice keeps telling me if it seems too good to be true, it is. Please talk me off the ledge and explain to me how this is possible. I feel in my gut she's going to win, but these odds are ridiculously skewed. I honestly don't know what to do, Mike. I certainly don't want to throw away that kind of money. How can Vegas be so wrong? You're my go-to for a voice of reason. Help me out here, Philly Paul. I don't know much about gambling on that level, and I don't know what plus 150 and minus 175 mean. I don't know what that means. I presume they're suggesting that Trump will win. I think I've heard that before. The odds are that Trump will win. It depends on how you look at it. I mean, if these people are just going by the polls, they might say that. If they're going by the media, they might buy into that. You would think people who put together odds would be a little sharper than this and might look at the facts. But who's to say this isn't yet another grift? You put the odds in favor of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has proven that he can grift the fuck out of these dumb motherfuckers. I've often said years ago, I said during Donald Trump, after seeing people willing to buy anything, I should put up a fake site selling Donald Trump merch, get as much money as I can, and then give it to Kamala or Joe Biden. That's a little shady, and I was never going to do that. But who's to say the people in Las Vegas are saying those dumb motherfuckers will bet on anything? They'll go crazy. They'll bet on anything. Or aren't these odds figured out by how many people are betting? Maybe there's a large faction of wealthy people in Vegas or around the country that are betting on Donald Trump because they're big Donald Trump fans. I'm going to tell you this, Philly Paul. I'm not a betting man, but I wouldn't be worried about putting $2,000 down on Kamala Harris. I know for sure she's going to win. There's no question in my mind, no matter what the media tells me, no matter what the polls say, the facts are the facts. And you're absolutely right. There's nothing that would suggest that Donald Trump can win. I'm not going to tell you to bet. I don't think betting that kind of money is a smart thing to do at any point, but I don't think you're going to lose. And if you know the polls are not accurate and they're being gamed, is it very surprising to think that things are being gamed with regard to this betting? I mean, it's Vegas, for fuck's sake. Do you really think everything's above board? Do you think there isn't some grift here to get a bunch of dumb people to part with their money? I don't know. She's going to win. You would win the bet. But anytime you wade into a bunch of dishonest motherfuckers, you may get separated from your money from one way or another. She's going to win. If the betting was legit, you would win your money. But I don't know if I'd waste my time on it. The only way I would bet on it, and I've offered it to some people, nobody's taken me up on it. People who seem strongly behind Donald Trump. I said, well, I'll put up $1,000 if you put up $1,000, but it's got to go to a third party escrow of some sort because I know you dumb poor motherfuckers will not pay me when I win. Nobody's taken me up on it. I'm not a betting man, but that's a fucking no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. All right, we are going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, moving on. We've got more emails. It's going to be an all emails show. I know you guys like that. I particularly like it too. It's good to hear from the people in the audience. I think your input is as important as anything I could say. So thank you for that. Next one says, "Hello, Mike. I'm just checking because yesterday I got a message from you on TikTok asking me if I have a Telegram account. Is that really you? Your account is the only one that I interact with on the app. Thanks so much, Veronica Z." I've talked about this a million times. This is a big problem on TikTok. People with larger accounts, even some smaller accounts, there's a lot of imposters out there. I probably have 15, 20 of them out there using my name, my videos, my information, and then reaching out to people like Veronica Z or any number of other folks and try to sell you crypto or try to get you to go to Telegram. I'll say this again. I have one account on TikTok. That is the only account I've ever had. I will never have another account on TikTok. If they kick me off, I'm not coming back. I'm fine with YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. I would never reach out to you. I'm not trying to sell you anything, and I would never try to sell you anything. So, no, that's not me. I don't have a Telegram account. And what a lot of people are thinking is these are bots, Russian bots, and they're going after people like me because they don't like what I have to say about Donald Trump. That may or may not be the case. And I don't know if they're trying to put me in a tight position or embarrass me. But just to the bots and anybody else who's listening from the Trumplefucks, you can't shame me. You can't cancel me. I don't work for anyone. My family is either on board with me or they don't. They know better than to fucking push back on me. Mike's going to do what Mike's going to do, and he's just going to fucking do it. And and I don't mean to talk in the third person, you know what I meant. But the point is I'm pretty transparent here. I am who I am. I say what I say. If there was anybody you could tell, hey, did you know Mike's doing this? I'm pretty high profile. Everybody fucking knows what I do and what I think and what I say. But these imposters will try to take whatever credibility I might have and try to convince listeners to buy into something or to make me look bad. Well, they can't. I don't fucking care. People need to know who I am. It's real easy. Watch TikTok, watch Instagram, watch YouTube, watch the podcast. It's pretty clear. So, no, I don't have any other accounts. On each platform, I have one account. I will never have more than one account. I will never reach out to you directly to sell you something. That's not what I'm here for. That doesn't happen. So, I will tell you this, when you come across these imposters, don't report them because it does absolutely no good. I've done it 100 times, and every time they say, yeah, no violation here. In fact, in spite of the fact they're stealing from me. But I think sometimes when you report them, it does kind of kick back on me. Then all of a sudden I get these things saying, you've got a creators fund violation because your video's not original. And the reason it seems not original because there's 9 other people running the same video. So I have to send them a note, appeal that, wait about an hour, and then they say, okay, yeah, you're right. But I do this over and over and over and over again every week. Every week. It never stops. So when you run across these people, don't argue with them, don't report them, just block them and take away uh, the attention that they're looking for. All right, this next one comes from Daniel. I think this one's going to wire me up a little bit. And I don't know how he meant it, but amateur pundits who don't need eyeballs says Trump is the likely winner. The national mood swings to Trump. I think we really need to prepare for the possibility he wins and think about how to cope. The blue wave seems very unlikely. It looks like 2016 without the optimism. Daniel. Daniel. I'm holding back here, and I'll tell you why, Daniel. On your email, it referred to you as rabbi something, so you're a religious man, and I have a tendency to swear, but this is fucking ridiculous. You're worried about the blue wave not happening, and it looks like 2016. What fucking world do you live in? There is no comparison from 2024 to 2016. A lot's happened, Daniel. They overturned Roe v. Wade. Women are dying in their fucking cars because of the laws the Republicans put across. Donald Trump's been convicted of 34 felony charges. Day after day, he says crazy fucking shit. His own chief of staff said he was the definition of fascism. Really? Is that how you feel? Well, Daniel, I'll tell you what, you go ahead and fucking feel that way, but get the fuck out of the way. Go in the corner, curl up in a ball, worry about all the things you have to worry about. We're going to be out here fighting and winning this thing. And then after, when all is clear, you can come out and enjoy the spoils. Jesus Christ, Daniel, you know better than that. Why would you write that to me? You know what I'm going to say. It's ridiculous. Everything you said in that email is bullshit. National mood swings to Trump. No, it hasn't. We really need to prepare for possibility he wins. No, we fucking don't, because he's not going to win. There is no way. And this is nothing like 2016. Fucking read the room, for Christ's sake. Beyond that, Daniel, have a nice day. All right, the next one says, hi, Boomer. Jackie here from Broke-Ass, Alabama. I thought this was a joke, but I read that a few McDonald's have an E. coli breakout and one person has died. I know it has nothing to do with Trump being in one of the locations, but just think of the irony of this happening after his fake ass stunt. Yeah, we heard about this E. coli from people eating Big Macs, which is Donald Trump's favorite, by the way. And I immediately thought, well, isn't that a nice, convenient um, situation? Donald Trump works at McDonald's, and then there's the E. coli break. outbreak. And then I look at all the places where the outbreaks were, and it wasn't Pennsylvania where Donald Trump was. So we can't blame him for it. But that's about Donald Trump's luck. If you don't know what the states are, I don't have it here in front of me. Go look it up online. And if you're going to McDonald's in those states, don't get a Big Mac. All right. Hello, Mike. Over the road, Russell here, or OTR Russell here, checking in with you tonight from Jackson, Tennessee. I really enjoy all your guests. I'm impressed with their insights and knowledge. They bring me many different perspectives and make me see things from various viewpoints. Arlene seems very professional, and I really enjoy when she's on. Ed, Eric, and I just heard TJ for the first time the other day, and he was excellent too. I agree with you that the polls are not worth paying attention to, but I'm wondering why all the polls show a close race, because that's where the money is. If it's a close race, that's where the money is for the media, for the pollsters, for all this shit. We know this isn't actually the case. Arlene explained how it is simply not possible to get an actual accurate sampling of voters. Should we see some polls that show the truth, or some polls showing Kamala winning by a large margin? Why is every poll slanted to Trump's favor? If I had a chance to ask Arlene a question, I would ask if there are any polls showing Kamala ahead 60-40 or even 70-30. And if not, why? Anyway, keep up the good work. Over the road, Russell. Well, there are no polls that show that, and there won't be. I mean, as Arlene said, we have a problem in that there are a lot of outlying polls that have cropped up at the last moment, and many of them are owned by Republican Trump humping supporters. The whole point of these polls isn't about determining who's going to win the election. It's about affecting the narrative. And as I've told you before, we're getting all these Republican polls that say Donald Trump is close or winning. And again, it has a lot to do with being able to make an argument after the election. Donald Trump loses. Yeah, but the polls said, fuck the polls. The polls were wrong in 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022. If they're wrong every goddamn time, why are you going to them as if they are the gospel? Well, maybe it's because the media is doing that. I would have the same question for the media. And I'm going to really have that question after this election. I can't wait till this is over and we see what really happens. And then all these people will back off and say, yeah, we were pretty close. No, you weren't pretty close. You weren't fucking close at all. And we need to address that. You know, it's real easy after the election. People's all worked up about the election. They forget about the polls, and whether they were wrong or right doesn't really matter until the next time they need polls. Oh, we were really right the last time. Yeah, nobody remembers what the first ones are. But I'm going to make a point to take a look at these polls, take a look at what the media says after the election, and say, what the fuck were you thinking? We'll see what happens. Don't trust the polls, whether they say Kamala's winning or whether she's losing. It's all a manipulation. It's all a game. It's not fucking worth even getting worked up about. It doesn't come down to polls. It comes down to facts. And the facts are the facts, and the facts show Kamala is winning big. If the polls were so close, why would Kamala be able to fundraise $1 billion in 80 days and Donald Trump barely got 300 million? Isn't that the essence of support? Money. I trust the money more than I trust a bunch of fucked up polls run by Republicans. All right. Next one says, hi, Mike. I went and voted today. In years past, there were only a couple people who were voting when I've gone. This time there were about 15 people ahead of me, and I'd say about that many showed up after. I only saw one MAGA hat, and I don't know if he was able to vote or not as he was walking in and as I was walking out. But typically you can't wear political attire to the polls. Yeah, and anybody but a dumb Trumplafuck would know that. I did a TikTok on this, but wanted to share it with the podcast audience as well. I noticed on my drive that there were way more yard signs with Harris Walls signs than Trump or Republican yard signs. I also noticed that there were more yards with Republican down ballot candidate signs than signs with Trump signs. It at least appeared that some Republicans won't support Trump at the top of the ticket while still voting Republican down ballot. I work with the Trumplafuck. He said he only gets his news from Fox. He hadn't heard that the McDonald's Trump was at was closed. He didn't realize it was all staged. After I told him about it, he laughed and said, "That's the problem. Not every network covers things the same way." No shit, Sherlock. There might be hope for him yet. And that comes from Eric of Iowa, who's a regular guest on the program. It's interesting to get Eric's insights because I think a lot of us believe that Iowa's going to be solid red. And the fact of the matter is, Eric's not so sure. And he would know better than we would because he's in the middle of it. Wouldn't that be interesting if Iowa turned blue? They got the abortion issue there, and that may be a factor in it turning blue. But we'll keep in touch with Eric, and Eric will keep us abreast of what's happening with Iowa. All right. Next says, "This is my second email to you. I listen to you daily, and you provide such a steady stream of confidence that it has actually made me realize what a worrisome person I tend to be and how I need to change this. I have now embraced this election and feel confident of results. Before Biden won, I worried and woke up every morning looking at the electoral votes. This voting cycle, I'm just enjoying myself. I live in a conservative small Nebraska town, but have always been a strong Democrat and an outsider. I find it hard to connect with people here that are like-minded. I find such solace in your podcast, so thank you. I want to also express how damn funny and entertaining Old Soul was last week. She was riled up, and I've never heard her like that. No, neither had I. She is such a sweet person and a kind soul. It was just hysterical to listen to her cut you off, but she did it respectfully. To sum up, I love all of your guests, although Old Soul is my favorite due to her soothing voice, plus she is so well informed. Thanks so much for everything we are doing, you are doing, and continue to do. So excited to get to meet Glenn Kirshner, Shelley. Yeah, just a reminder, on November 7th, I'm going to Washington, D.C. to talk to a group of court reporters. They asked me to come out and give a talk. It's an interesting situation. I've never seen anything like this before. It's not in a convention hall. Each session is at a restaurant. So you have 50, 60 people there, and you go up and you talk and you have a nice meal. And they said to me, go to any of the sessions you want. Now I'm on the first night because I'm kind of the opening act. Who knows who the fuck I am? I'm curious as to who there might know who I am. But as on the last night at dinner, and you know me, I'm all about free food. So I'm going to be at that dinner, even though I'm already done with my shit. But Glenn Kirshner and V from Under the Desk News are going to be there. They just happen to be a couple of folks I actually respect on TikTok. So I'm looking forward to going there. And I don't know that there's anything planned for me to meet them, but I tend to be in your face and tend to be unafraid to walk up to people. So you can be guaranteed that I will fucking do that. Um, Next one says, "Hi, Boomer. No time, no right, not intentionally. I have been working, but I listen to your podcast when I can. Can't say enough about how you make me calm down. As I've said previously, I'm from a town close to Wildwood, New Jersey, where Von Schitzenpants held a rally on Mother's Day. What the fuck?" Anyway, New Jersey is a blue state, but this area, southern coast of New Jersey, is disinformed. Jeff Vandrew is our representative in the House. He was a Democrat and then flipped because Trump got in his pocket. He is a douchebag. I have written to you about him before. I would love for you to expose him. On a more positive note, things are looking more positive in this area where the last two elections were all Trump signs. This time there are many Harris Walls signs out, and my neighbors have given me positive comments about my Harris Walls, obviously, sign in my front yard. I'm pumped. Let's fucking go. Love you and love what you do. Thank you, Blue Dot in CMCH, New Jersey. Now, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think you'll find that when you go into some of these places that are notoriously red, you're seeing less signs. Now, I don't know if it's that they're being more quiet or they're changing their minds. I'm not sure. Keep in mind, we don't have to change a lot of Republicans' minds to win this thing. We don't. And there are a lot of Republicans currently that can't stomach Donald Trump. Who knew? A rapist, a 34-time convicted felon, a treasonist, an insurrectionist. Who knew they wouldn't like him after he did that sort of stuff? Um, I'm seeing that trend too. We have towns in Minnesota that are a little more red, and even when I go to those towns, it's not quite as intense as it once was. I remember I used to drive up a road, and this guy owned a construction company, and literally had like a 30-foot flag that he flew up on a fucking crane. And eventually, the town went to him and say, "Listen, you keep that up, it's going to cost you $1,000 a day in fines." Surprisingly, that shit came down. All right, next up, it says, "Hi, Boomer. The old buzzard Jace from Texas has some great insight and even a better laugh. By the way, I did not coin the phrase Boomer Brigade, not mine. I have clamored for a t shirt, but I've given up on that. I refer to you as the Boomer community if I call it something, and it's a diverse, lovely community. I couldn't agree more." Boom, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a boomer community party sometime. Can you imagine how much fun we'd all have meeting post election? If that happens, we're all at the St. Paul Moose Lodge, and you see me slipping out the back door. I'll be going out to hit a very nice Virginia blunt. Jace, Soul, Ed, any takers? Follow me out. What a dang party we would have. Best Garage Door Jeff. Boom. Did you ever meet the guys who study traffic hardcore in terms of flow, like it was a fluid science? Are there guys like that? See, you've got me so worried that I'm thinking about shit like that. Actually, I do know people who study the flow of traffic. When I was a traffic reporter, I worked with the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and they got engineers going through all this shit. And I would sit down with them and they'd ask me my perspective of traffic because I watched it all day, and they'd tell me all their scientific basis for what they're doing. And I could only tell them on what I saw. And when you see something every day, you get a sense of why shit happens. We didn't always agree. And I always thought it was funny that they would be so particular and so scientific. I mean, the bottom line is when you have cars on the roadway, you have you have people driving those cars, so they have personalities. It's not all about data. I'll give you an example. One day there was a car stalled on the right shoulder in a interchange in downtown Minneapolis. It's pretty busy. Now that would normally slow things down just by virtue of people slowing down to take a look at what's going on. There was this car stalled on the right shoulder. But this backup got to be huge, fucking huge. It went like 3 miles, the backup, and it was stopped traffic. Now you would say, why would it do that? It was just a car on the shoulder. It wasn't even blocking. The one difference, you can't come up with data. There were three 20-something girls in bikinis in their convertible car sitting on top of the car waving at people. Figure that out in the data. You and I can figure out why it happened. Those dirty minded men who were going by while these cute girls were out waving and having a good time while their car is stalled. In a normal situation, you might get a half-mile backup. You put four girls in bikinis, fucker goes back 5, 6 miles. Anyway, moving on. Thank you, Garage Door Jeff. And the idea of a get together with people listening to the podcast, that would be a great idea. I just don't know how you would do it. I don't know what spot you would do it at. And if you went to one spot, could you get enough people to even show up? I don't know. We're kind of widespread as far as listenership. We got some in various states. And I'm not going to tell somebody, you got to come across country to join this party. So Garage Door Jeff can have a blunt with you. I don't know. I like the idea. I just don't know how you logistically put it together. Um, Dear Mike, if I may, of course you may. A reproductive freedom organization is sending me emails, so I sent them this policy idea. Policy idea. I get a feeling this is going to be a long one. Say the logic of the Bible is right about self beginning at first breath. The logic appears in the words breath of life. Logically, they must be a first breath, and logically, there must be a last breath. More quotations in Google in the article Pro choice pastors like Raphael Warnock have the Bible history on their side. Number two, by self, I mean which experiences now. If the logic is correct, when the first experience of the self must be hunger for air, which is a term from science physiology. However, if there is logic from the Bible, if the logic from the Bible is incorrect and the self begins before the first breath, then some experiences other than hunger for air must occur before the first experience of hunger for air. Maybe the first beat of the heart. However, there is self control over the breath, but not over the heartbeat. I can take a few deep breaths and then hold my breath for a certain amount of time, but I can't take a few deep heartbeats and then hold my heartbeat for a certain amount of time. Self control, controlled by the self, exists for the breath, but not for the heartbeat. Physiology is most likely that astrocytes, a kind of glial glial cell in the brain, are connected via connexins, which flood the system during parts. Now you're just fucking with me here, right? I'm pretty good. I got a pretty good vocabulary, but you got a bunch of this shit in here that I don't understand. And if I don't understand, the people don't understand. I get your point. I get your point and what you're trying to do, but I'm not going to read through all these words because ultimately it's not going to mean anything to anybody who's listening. I'm sorry, but that's just the fucking bottom line. Here's the deal. If you want to explain this, Lee, it said I would invite Nova and select YouTubers to help transfer the information. Lee, I appreciate the effort you put into that, but if I read that whole thing, people are going to go, "What the fuck?" I'm not that deep a guy. I'm not as detail oriented. Maybe somebody like Arlene could deal with that better, but that's not me. Tell you what, Lee, if you really want to get that message across, send me an email. I'll put you on the show. I'll let you say it in your words. And then I'll ask questions that normal people might answer. And then maybe we'd have some kind of interaction that would be valuable to people. I'm not saying that what you wrote isn't valuable and it makes some sense, at least the first part of what I was saying. And I understand your argument, but Jesus Christ. Syncytium? What the fuck is that? I'm not a dumb guy. I don't know what that word means. And I guarantee you a lot of folks don't either. So we need somebody to explain it, to translate it. So that's why I'm saying, you want to talk about this? I will talk about it, but you're going to have to explain it to a dumb guy, a big, dumb white guy, and that is me. All right. Thank you, Lee, for the effort. All right. Hi, Mike. Colin from the UK here. Love your show. I wake up every morning at 6:30 a.m. and download your podcast to my phone. Then listen to it on the way to work and back home. It's very informative. You have such a diverse and knowledgeable range of guests. Old Soul being my favorite. Marry me, Old Soul. Well, Old Soul has a honey, as she's pointed out. So you may want to put that on hold for. I'm sure she appreciates the offer, but I think she's locked in right now. One thing I've been thinking a lot about recently is the debate about Trump being sidelined via the Amendment 25 if he wins, which he won't. Trump has two main drivers in his life. The first being making money, and the second is looking good, like all narcissists. He now has a third driver, which is to stay out of jail. What if he intends to become president and pardon himself of all federal crimes, put pressure on state governors to pardon him from state crimes? Then he makes a deal with Vance to make money from selling more state secrets and making deals with big businesses to cut regulations. He can then step down and pass on the presidency to Vance, knowing he's going to make loads of money after he leaves. Now, here's the big part. Suppose the deal with Vance is that Don Jr. has to be offered the vice presidential slot. This will keep it in the family. Perhaps this is why Don Jr. and Eric were the ones pushing for Vance, as he is in all of their pockets. Perhaps Vance will have to step down at some point to give Don Jr. the presidency. It's a crazy idea, but aren't they all crazy? Yeah, it sounds crazy. But with Donald Trump's name attached to it, not fucking crazy. Thankfully, he's not going to win. So this whole scenario will not play out. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's going on in Donald Trump's delusional fucking mind. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. He's always trying to game the system. It's all about looking good and all about making money. You're absolutely right about that. But it's not going to work. Here's the other thing you have to consider, Colin. Think about every plan he's had, every strategy he's had. What's the common point of all those strategies and all those plans? They all fail and he fucks it up. So even if he did get elected, he'd fuck up that plan. I think they will push him out ultimately and kick him to the curb. Why go through this whole process and let Donald Trump win if you can just kick him to the curb? Um, I don't know. I'm just glad that's not really going to be an issue. We're just throwing up suppositions here. It's not going to happen. There's no way Donald Trump can win this fucking election. All right. Hello, Mike. I think I figured out Trump's strategy. He is saying all of these crazy things so that when he loses the election and spends his days in court on various charges, he will claim insanity. Much like other criminals who are fine when they commit the crime and then claim insanity to avoid the prosecution. Thank you, Eddie. Again, that requires some intellect and some strategy. Donald Trump doesn't behave that way. Donald Trump is a narcissist. He would never admit to being insane, being wrong, having lost, being stupid. He would never admit to that sort of thing. So, under normal conditions, maybe that's true. But with Donald Trump, we're dealing with an entirely different animal, and I just don't see that to be the case. Um, Here's another one from Jackie. Hi, Boomer. Jackie here from Brocass, Alabama. I listened to a podcast this morning and just had a thought. They're saying that Georgia has more Republican voters, but it's a lot of Republicans that crossed over. And just because they're registered as Republicans, they could have secretly voted for VP Harris. Unless they have already done the count, which I don't think so. They don't know at this time if it's a red vote or a blue vote. A lot are not voting party. It's just a thought. Stay blessed, Jackie. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, the first several days, all I heard was that there were record amounts that were voting early, and most of them were coming from Democratic strongholds. Um, I don't know who's reporting the opposite of this now, unless something changed over the week. Are there more Republican voters in Georgia? I don't know that that's true. I mean, there's a lot of rural people voting for Donald Trump, but when you look at Atlanta and some of the other bigger cities, Savannah, for example, there aren't more Republican voters in those areas where the vast amount of the population is. So I'm not worried about Georgia. I think Georgia will go to Kamala Harris. I think there's a lot of issues there, and he's fucked up in Georgia to no end. Um, whether there are more Republican voters, I'm not really worried about it. I've heard nationally throughout the country there are more Democratic voters than there are Republican voters. I understand that to be true. Whether it's the opposite in Georgia, I don't know. I mean, like I've told you before, we're at a point now where everything is pretty much set in motion. Nothing we can really do or worry about that's going to change anything. And as I've always said, don't worry about things you can't control. We've done all we could up to this point. Now just sit back, vote, and watch and see what happens. I think the facts will bear out, the truth will bear out, and Donald Trump will lose. I don't think there's any question in my mind and a lot of people's minds. We can keep throwing these little things. Well, what if this happens? What if that? Fuck that. Vote and wait. People are going to say whatever they're going to say. They're going to say Trump's going to win, or I'm going to say Kamala's going to win. When it comes down to it, it only comes down to November 5th and what really happens. So we've done all we can. We've said all we can. Vote and wait and see what fucking happens. And don't worry about it. We can't worry about shit that may never happen because then we wasted a lot of time and anxiety on shit that was unnecessary. Um, and keep in mind, we may not even need Georgia if Georgia is a loss because Kamala will probably get Pennsylvania. Hell, Kamala could maybe even get Florida. And if she gets Florida and North Carolina, doesn't matter what happens in Georgia. But this is all stuff we can't control. So just sit back, fucking relax, and watch what happens on November 5th. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I want to thank you for your constant emails. I want to thank the guests for coming on. I'm in Los Angeles currently. We have one other podcast before I get back to Minnesota tomorrow. I believe it's Will again. You can't hold Will down. Will gets fired up and he's got shit to say. So Will will be on Sunday. This is Saturday. And then Monday, we'll get back to more timely podcast. Should something happen crazy, I do still have the ability to go onto YouTube and TikTok and maybe even Spotify and add some addendums or additions to what the podcasts are. So I'll do that if necessary, if something crazy happens, which is crazy enough to say, of course, something crazy is going to fucking happen. It always happens. Anyway, you have a great night and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.